Hey guys, Kalltorak here, and today I am bringing you the only tier list you will ever need for this entire patch. Trust me on that. I am bringing you my Thorns Ascendancy tier list. This tier list will be taking into account the standard Thorns playstyle, which is the stop hitting yourself. You take damage to deal damage. When making this tier list, I'm not just taking into account the endgame, but I am also taking into account league starts. Now we don't have the data mining yet, or the full passive trees, but we can get a pretty good idea of what's going to be the best Thorns Ascendancies. Alright, let's just dive straight into the list, no wasting time. We're going to start with Ritualist. Now, I know some people might be surprised that I'm putting Ritualist A tier. I talk about Ritualist as one of my favorite Thorns Ascendancies, and it's honestly one of the top 3 Thorns Ascendancies, include for endgame specifically. Let's talk about why it is not S tier though. Ritualist is a surprisingly expensive Ascendancy. More gear means more gear, and you have to spend more money on it, right? While the third ring slot is extremely important for Thorns, it does mean that you're going to have to invest a lot more money into that extra ring. Also, the starting area for Ritualist isn't the best. You do have quite a trek over to the Thorns passives on the warrior section of the tree. Now, we do not know if the evasion side of the tree will be getting anything Thorns related, but we can assume that the side of the tree that's going to be getting all the Thorns stuff is going to be the strength side. While the extra ring slot is huge and the boost to your ring and amulet is very, very important, it's just super expensive and it's just not the best league start, so Ritualist is going A tier. The counterpart to the Ritualist is the Amazon, and that is just going straight into the F tier. There's only 2 classes that are going F tier, and this is one of them. The Amazon gives you bonus leech, which doesn't help all Thorns damage leeches whenever you are playing just the standard Thorns style. As of right now, there's no way to play a Thorns range style. Can't put it into bow attacks. It's really only melee attacks that you can play the traditional Thorns style with currently. And the accuracy stuff really doesn't help with this build. Out of all of the classes, this is probably the worst one to league start Thorns on, or just play Thorns on in general. Unless new playstyles or new opportunities open up for a ranged Thorns playstyle, there's really no world I would ever league start or play Thorns Amazon. Okay, keeping it on with the ranged dex classes, we are going on to Pathfinder. Now, Pathfinder is interesting. It's not the worst Ascendancy for Thorns, especially if we get more options for poison Thorns. The stacking poison does not end up working out as cool as you would think it would. Thorns hits in general are very small, and you really want big hits for poison. And until we get the option to be able to use Thorns inside a flask, ranged weapons and stuff, there is really no opportunity for a ranged Thorns build. Now, where Pathfinder shines is you get the extra passive points that makes it easier to get to the Thorns section, as well as the movement speed penalty. Right now, a lot of Thorn styles use Resonating Shield, as well as other movement skills. Right now, you can use a Resonating Shield with the Crackling Barrier support gem, and having that movement speed reduction would be really nice for Pathfinder, but there's really no reason to play Thorns on a Pathfinder right now, unless you're specifically trying to do something silly with Crackling Barrier. And even then, Crackling Barrier is going to be probably better on an int-stacking class. You really don't need to go Pathfinder for Resonating Shield. And this is probably the only tier list that you will ever see Deadeye F on. There is literally no reason why you should go Thorns on a Deadeye. I will put them in front of the Amazon. Tailwind has minor benefits for Thorns for the increased movement speed and skill speed, but otherwise the Ascendancy is a complete bust. There is just no reason to go Thorns on a Deadeye. Again, you can't put Quill Burst and Barbs in range attacks, so with it being so projectile heavy, you're not really gaining anything, and yeah, the marks do nothing right now. For the traditional Thorns playstyle, again, we're talking about the stop hitting yourself. Deadeye ain't it. But we'll put it above the Amazon at least. Alright, let's go on to Mercenary, and Mercenary is actually one of the Ascendancies I am most excited for. Let's start with Gemling. Gemling I'm putting right behind Ritualist, and honestly, Gemling could potentially be better than the Ritualist. One thing, Mercenaries are very close to the starting area of the Thorns section, which is the strength section for Warrior. You actually can get to the Leech section of the Thorns really fast on the Mercenary start. Now, what Gemling has going for it is you have the +2 levels to red gem skills, which is Scavenge Plating. Scavenge Plating did get nerfed in this patch, but having the additional gem skill levels will still be pretty nice. And then Gemling also has the added bonus of Critical Strike does no additional damage to you. So this is just a really solid layer for Gemling. Now, again, I could be sleeping on Gemling, but I also could be overhyping it a little bit. If the extra gem levels don't end up panning out, and the reduced damage from the critical strikes doesn't end up being that big, then I would put Gemling at B tier, but I would never put Gemling S tier. It would be either a low A or a high B tier. Alright, let's talk about Tactician. Tactician is pretty awful. Now D tier I might be sleeping too much on Tactician. It really just depends on the banner changes and how those play out. In general, I'm not a fan of banner playstyle for Thorns. We'll have to see what it does for the damage scaling and the defenses for the character. In general, the pin stuff just never made sense for Thorns. You don't want people to not be hitting you and chasing you when you're playing Thorns. You actually want them, engaging with you and trying to kill you. And the rest of the Ascendancy isn't really Thorns related. Okay, and this might be the one that surprises people the most, but I am putting Witch Hunter in S tier. I think Witch Hunter has the potential to be the best Thorns Ascendancy. There's a possibility of me league starting Witch Hunter for Thorns. First of all, concentration is super awesome. It increases the cooldown of the enemies in front of you. And a lot of the enemies and certain bosses in this game have cooldowns that don't trigger Thorns sometimes. Or sometimes their cooldowns are doing things that aren't actively hitting you to trigger Thorns, like they're casting a big spell or a buff or something for themselves. When their spells are on cooldown more often, guess what? They're going to be hitting you more often. So concentration just ends up being nice. Zealous Inquisition is a decent alternative for AoE for the Thorns playstyle. But what I am most excited about is Sorcery Ward. In the last patch, we saw some incredible things from Sorcery Ward defensively. Depending on what the passive tree looks like, Sorcery Ward might be the best defensive measure we can have for Thorns in this patch. Keeping in mind all the block changes coming, all of the potential changes around life and armor, Sorcery Ward might be amazing for Thorns. And then you got Culling Strike and Decimating Strike, which are decent, but the main thing right now that I am looking at with Witch Hunter is Sorcery Ward, and I genuinely think that this potential could be huge. Alright, moving on to the warrior classes. Let's just dive straight into the Smith of Katava. Smith of Katava is going B tier. Now, Smith of Katava got nerfed pretty big in this patch. I don't think the nerfs are the end of the world for the Thorns playstyle, but Smith of Katava was already pretty bad just because of the chest piece ascendancy. You get a lot of Thorns damage from your chest piece in the current patch. We don't know if there's going to be new Thorns modifiers on other pieces in the new patch yet. But one of the biggest appeals to Smith of Katava is that chest piece ascendancy. And while you can get a base with a Thorns enchant on it, you are ending up giving a lot of offensive power by choosing this Ascendancy. It's still solid, but it would never be one of my go-tos for specifically Thorns. Wind Dancer, Smith could be still S tier potential, but for Thorns specifically, just because of how much you're giving up with the chess piece, I would avoid Smith, at least for a league start. Alright, so no one's going to be surprised here, but Titan, it is going in front of Witch Hunter. I've said for patches that Titan is arguably the best Ascendancy in the game, but it's always been very good for Thorns. Thorns struggles to scale its damage, and Hulking Form is one of the best ways to scale Thorns' damage. There's a lot of Thorns passes on the tree. We might be getting more in the patch, and yeah, Hulking Form just directly buffs them. You're also talking about Ascendancy where you're taking damage to deal damage, and the increased maximum life from Titan is huge. I mean, especially with the changes to Giant's Blood, if we end up still using a two-hander with a Thorn style, just like, maybe still run Giant's Blood with a shield, the extra life from Titan might end up making up for that loss, so we're still able to play that play style. In general, though, Titan is just a fantastic, well-rounded Ascendancy for leveling and the endgame. Being able to use the maximum life Ascendancy while you're leveling is just super helpful. And then, of course, yeah, I've always simped for Hulking Form. It's so good for so many different play styles. Yeah, I just love Titan. And then, yeah, I'm actually going to be putting Warbringer ahead of Titan. There's a lot going on with Warbringer that is super huge this patch. If I'm being honest, I am not sure which of these three I will be league starting. It changes every moment. They're all three so good, but let's talk about why Warbringer is the best. Scavenge Plating requires you to break armor to gain its stacks, and Scavenge Plating gives you a massive amount of Thorns damage. Now, you cannot put support gems into Thorns, at least as we're right now. We don't know if that change is coming in the patch. But you can't put support gems into Thorns, so you can't have your Thorns damage breaking armor for you via something like Splinter. But what you can enable your Thorns to break armor with is Anvil's Weight. Anvil's Weight, a part of the Warbringer Ascendancy, it makes all of your damage break armor. This is super, super comfy for Thorns playstyle. You literally never have to think about armor break. You're always at max scavenge plating stacks. It is awesome. The other thing about armor break is it usually requires, a skill that does physical damage to break armor. But when you mix Anvil's Weight with Avatar of Fire, you can very easily break armor now with fire. And we've seen from the live stream that we're getting a lot of synergy between fire and armor break. So Warbringer, just not only is it good for the traditional Thorns playstyle, but if you were to do an Avatar of Fire version, which might be very good in this patch, Warbringer enables that very well. We also talked about the block changes in this patch, and yeah, block got changed from 75% as the cap to 50% baseline. With that, the Warbringer Turtle Charm passive from last patch is now baseline. So everyone has a cap of 50% block, and then everyone has Turtle Charm. Now, what Warbringer got was you are now able to get your block cap back up to 75%. Now, block is a huge part of Thorns. And yeah, that extra 75% block could be huge. Taking into account the Lich, the 30% damage you're going to be tanking might not be the end of the world. We'll have to see there. But overall, I think Warbringer is, if you are new to Thorns, with how much synergy Anvil's Weight has with the playstyle, as well as the extra block you're getting, it is just so chill to play Warbringer Thorns. So again, if you're really torn and it's your first time playing Thorns, Warbringer is potentially just the coziest and safest bet. Okay, let's move on to Sorceress. So this might surprise some of you guys, but I'm putting Chronomancer B tier. I have a Will It Thorns series where I was just trying out random ascendancies with Thorns, and Chronomancer was one of the better performing ones. I was able to do a Recoup Chronomancer, and the normal playstyle is Leech, but I was just trying alternate playstyles in case we got future passives and talents later on, and it ended up working very well. Now, the rest of the Ascendancy is a little awkward around Thorns. You're almost kind of wasting the Ascendancy, which is why it's in B tier, and maybe should be in C tier. But when you lean heavily into the Recoup portion as a defensive layer, you can just purely defend on it, and with Sacrosanctum having the Energy Shield Recoup, it ended up being super, super powerful. So it was one of my more defensive Thorns characters. We were lacking damage, but with the new changes to the passive tree, maybe we're going to be able to scale it a little bit easier. But yeah, we'll have to see, as well as we have the potential with the int stacking with Crackling Barrier. Hopefully that is a little bit better in this patch. And in Stormweaver, I'm going to put it C tier, just behind the Pathfinder. I would not right now be willing to go Stormweaver over Chronomancer, just because the extra defensive layer from Chronomancer is just so much better. But Stormweaver, where it has potential, is with Lightning Thorns and the mana stacking Crackling Barrier style. If this style ends up scaling really well into the late game, Stormweaver has some serious potential, but its position on the tree is just a little bit too far from the start, and you're not going to be able to level very efficiently. It's got the same problems as Chronomancer, but Chronomancer just edges it out slightly with that Recoup. Alright, let's move on to Witch, and we are going to start with Infernalist. And Infernalist is going into C tier right now. There's just too many question marks with Fire Thorns that we just don't know if Infernalist is going to be worth going. There's some cool potential with a lot of like auto bomber styles with a lot of the caster classes, but since we're talking specifically traditional Thorn style, I'm going to put Infernalist just a little bit lower on the list. Lich, I'm going to put in B tier. I'm actually going to put it ahead of the Chronomancer. Lich is really good. Unholy Might was bugged in this patch. It didn't scale with Thorns, but if they end up fixing Unholy Might scaling with Thorns, that is just a huge Thorns buff. The extra Jewel buff is really good, and Lich is one of the better defensive classes. Lich could potentially be an A tier or even an S tier Ascendancy for Thorns. I would maybe never put it S tier just because of its distance, but defensively and with the potential power of Unholy Might, Lich has very serious potential with Thorns. We just don't know quite yet, but I would be happy to put Lich into A tier, for sure. I might be sleeping on Liches a little bit too much. Okay, and then Bloodmage, it's going in D tier. Unfortunately, Bloodmage does not offer a lot to the Ascendancy in terms of the damage. It's mainly spell focused, and right now, unless you're doing an auto bomber style, now let me clarify, Bloodmage, there are potential possibilities where Thorns can be used as an engine for auto bomber styles. And Bloodmage could be great for that, but for your traditional stop hitting yourself style, Bloodmage just won't be it. The only benefit is the extra maximum life, which could be good, but there are better ways of getting that via like Overleech and stuff, so I am just not willing to put Bloodmage higher than Infernalist. Yeah, it's going to go in the D tier. Okay, and for these last two, this might upset some people, but I am only going to be putting the monks into C tier. I am going to put them in front of the Pathfinder. Now, there could be some serious sleeping on these two. We have a lot of question marks about the unarmed fighting style. I do have unarmed monk or Thorns builds on my channel that have done very well, and I have Thorns builds that I've done for monk on both an Invoker and a Chayula monk. The biggest problem is they are as far away from the Thorn section as you can get, and because they're so deep in the evasion energy shield section of the playstyle, you're almost kind of forced into leaning into one of those. And evasion right now, there is no support for dodging in Thorns right now. You have to be hit. So just in terms of position, the monk is in the literal worst spot of the tree for Thorns. So in terms of league start, it's as bad as it gets. That's why they are so low. Now, offensively, there's a lot of question marks with both of these ascendancies, but just in terms of league start and all the question marks we have around the unarmed styles, I cannot, with good conscience, put them in C or higher than C tier right now. I do think that Invoker might have some serious potential with some elemental Thorn styles. The problem with Chayula Monk is, right now, you have to have Scavenge Plating, so you can't use Darkness for the Spirit. All of the Leech stuff doesn't really help that much when you take into account that with all of these Leech Ascendancies, we have an Anoint or a passive node on the tree that gives us Thorns Leech. All of your Thorns damage leeches. It doesn't matter what flavor of damage it is, fire, physical, chaos. So we'll always have Leech when playing Thorns. So there's only very niche situations where you're not going to be taking that passive where you would benefit from those, so they're not very huge. So yeah, and then the Flames of Chayula, I'm still a big downer of. So honestly, we'll put Invoker ahead of the Chayula Monk. But both of these two with some unarmed monk play styles could potentially work their way in the B tier. But as long as they're this far away from the Thorn starting area, it's just going to be so hard to ever league start Thorns, ever. So unfortunately, even if Monk thrives in the late game for Thorns, they will always be a struggle. So, and this is the list. I am curious what you guys think I should league start for Thorns. What are you wanting to see? Because what I'm going to be playing is what I'm going to be making a guide for it initially. And I know a lot of you guys are wanting to follow along with my playthrough and try and keep up and then, follow what I'm doing as we go along. Are you wanting me to play Warbringer for the more easy access to armor break, the higher block chance, and the potential value of the Avatar of Fire playstyle? Are you wanting me to play Titan with the extra life and armor as well as the benefit of hulking form? Or are you wanting me to do something a little bit different and go with Witch Hunter? I've been hyping up Witch Hunter for 3 patches now. Is now the time I finally league start a Witch Hunter? Let me know in the comments down below, guys. If you've been enjoying the content, please like and subscribe. Apologies to Darth microtransaction. Once again, ran out of time. Take care, boys. See you in the next one.